Cybernation Uncensored.
And we're live. What's going on, Chumbas? It's me and Wisdom here, yet again.
Hey.
To provide you with some commentary from two Forlorn dopes. Though it looks like not too many people are on right now, but hopefully people will pick up. So, let's get started. On my site front, I'm working on a couple of small changes. One is to my ACPA generator. So you're going to have input boxes so you can track your SDB and SP live on the site. So that way you can kind of figure out what's going on or use it kind of real time for those who use it. I know that was a request from a specific user. I don't remember who it was, but most of the things I worked on were requests. Another request was to be able to put or disable the layering calculations for armor. So that is part of the settings within the Cyberpunk 2070 or Cyberpunk 2020 character generator. So in the settings you can suppress that if you want. The other thing on the character sheet was I'm putting in 2 toggle buttons so you can actually disable wound effects. So I know there's certain cyberware and drugs that allows you to overcome that, so you don't take any penalties. So I kind of implemented that in there. And also, I put in the actual body damage modifier, so that way it's visible based upon your current bod. So those are a couple things on my site. The other thing I'm doing with my site is actually upgrading some of the JavaScript libraries. This is all the technical stuff, which kind of is annoying. It's a lot more work than I really wanted to because things changed and now it's kind of breaking some of my layouts. So I got to go in, look at every single page, make sure everything's working properly before I push out the next release. Hopefully I'll get that out this weekend. So, yeah, that's it from my site.
You have been rather studious. I have not been anywhere near as industrious. I had a few setbacks the last couple of weeks. Mom went into the hospital, came out with COPD, and of course, ever growing host of medical issues. But she's having to stay with us now, so we can try and help her quit smoking because she's on oxygen. And then a couple of nights ago, my storage unit got robbed, and they took just a tremendous amount of stuff. They didn't take everything, and luckily, there's a long story. If you've got me on Facebook, you can. I posted the majority of the story there. I'll be posting it on my blog soon. But luckily, we got most of it back. However, there's a bunch of stuff that we weren't able to get back. But what they seemed to steal was my comic books, my like toys, like vintage toys and all that kind of stuff, modern stuff, swords and collectibles like that, and video games and role-playing stuff. And what they didn't steal, a lot of it they trashed. The cyberpunk books appear to have been safe, but some of the peripherals and accessories got damaged, and I can't find. What they left in the storage unit was a giant mess of my stuff, and they might have taken most of my miniatures. Not the box sets, but like the loose miniatures I had, both Cyberpunk, Dungeons and Dragons, and various other fantasy stuff. I just realized that tonight talking to you.
Yep.
About an hour ago, Will. So that's been my week.
I feel for you, man.
Yeah. So I apologize in advance, everybody, if I sound a little discombobulated and disjointed and out of focus. My mind has been kind of all over the place. Hence, no real. Again, I apologize. There's no real format tonight, guys. We're just gonna kind of roll with the punches.
But we are setting up a format. We have a document. We're actually scheduling things out for future episodes.
Oh yeah, we got
filled for the next year. So we should be good going forward. Just a little bit of a rocky start this episode.
Yeah. It's my fault. He was ready. I was not.
So in other cyberpunk news, at least from my end, I just had a game yesterday with my group. They were doing a deal in the Hacienda, which is the casino in Night City. During that deal, basically, there's multiple factions vying for the package that they were stole from a facility. And shit went down in the penthouse. Luckily, none of the characters died. They kept cool heads. They avoided combat, even though there was other people getting shot at and other gunplay happening. The only drawback that happened was I come to find out one of the characters decided to use their MA as their dump stat and put a 1 in it. And I think we talked about this last episode. So last night he was captured, and behind the scenes, of course, he's being pumped full of drugs and being told, or not being told, he's telling his captors all about the team, and some of them are a little more paranoid than others, but definitely was an interesting game as they started sorting out, oh shit, what did we do? Who's after us? What are they going to come out with us? And talking to all their allies, friends, and families that are within the city to say, watch your six.
Nice.
Yeah, so
that sounds like good fun right there.
It always is, especially to give them paranoia. So, like a couple hours after they left the hacienda, and of course after the one character who was captured started leaking information, also his phone, all their phones suddenly started ringing in their pockets. Half of the group turned their phones off immediately, while the other half kind of left them ringing or answered. And of course, the big baddies are asking for the package, which of course they've already offloaded to another corporation. So again, some things are afoot there. Yeah, so I know we haven't gamed with the Nomad thing because of various situations falling apart on us.
Yeah. yeah, it's affected everything. My mi vida loca.
I tell you, real life sometimes want to just kick you in the balls pretty hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we had a couple ideas of what we're going to talk about tonight. One thing I've been kind of doing a little research on, like what's in the upcoming year. And I know we talked about last session about the Edge Runner anime that's coming out on Netflix. I also did a little more research
about that.
to see what other cyberpunk stuff is coming out. this year, and as I keep on going down that rabbit hole, I first thought it was going to be pretty dry for us as cyberpunk fans, but as I continue to dig into it, it seems like there's more and more possible stuff coming out. I don't know if it's going to be this year or the next, but a few things that I've seen is Mad Max: The Wasteland, which I guess up until last year was still kind of being worked on, or sorry, the studios approved it last year. So if they approved it last year, that means it's going to be in working. So maybe next year, maybe the year after that, it'll come out.
Yeah, I mean, George Miller's been talking about it for a while and wanting to do a prequel to Fury Road, and he's apparently Liam Hemsworth is attached. I forget who they got that was going to be playing a young Furiosa, but yeah. Anything Mad Max is always going to be welcome in my eyes. I love that franchise. I love the rip-offs of that franchise, especially all those weird like Filipino and Spanish rip-offs, Wheels of Fire and Battle Truck and stuff like that.
I've never seen the rip-off ones.
Oh my God. They for a brief period, I want to say about between 1980 and 1990, really 1980 and 1985, there were just a ton of Mad Max ripoffs. There were some later ones, of course, but I mean that's where we got like Cherry 2000 and even weird like space ripoffs of Mad Max, like I've talked about it before. Well, like Jared Sin,
yeah,
the destruction of Jared Sin, and Battlestorm, and Space Hunter with a very, very young Molly Ringwald. Yeah, but I can't remember the guy's name who directed them. But there were a couple of Filipino European productions, the best of which, in my opinion, was in fact Wheels of Fire. Like it had the best Mad Max vehicles, and that's really what I rate those movies on, is how cool their vehicles are. And they had the proper muscle, all tricked out and nomaded up, and yeah, you'll see pictures from it scattered all over my Nomad articles on Datafortress2020. I'm going off on a tangent.
Hey, man. No worries. Other upcoming things, supposedly Tron 3 is getting worked on.
No.
Or it's in development.
Don't you tease me with that. I mean, I open up every one of these shows with greetings program, so you know I love myself some Tron.
So, supposedly Jared Leto is going to be the star of this one. But we will see. Again, you know, they're all in development. What I'm talking about, supposed development.
Yeah, I mean, it could be worse. There's worse than Jared Leto out there.
Other things that are doing another reboot is RoboCop. So
now, is it a reboot or is it a sequel to the originals? Because I remember a couple of years ago they were talking about doing a sequel to the originals and getting like Peter Weller in on it.
Well, they said it is RoboCop Returns. And again, there's not much on IMDb, at least for the free version. I'm sure there might be some more on if you have the pro version, because they have a little more news in it. But I'm not going to spend money on it. Just to find out about one movie.
I mean, I can't see Peter Weller coming back as RoboCop unless he's just sitting in that chair locked in, and I don't know. I could figure out a way to make it work, but I couldn't figure out a way to make it work and him be like the action star RoboCop.
Yeah, Capricious Nature.
Peter Weller is.
Capricious Nature says
he's not aging well.
1986. Yeah, well, He didn't look too bad a few years ago when he was on Dexter. I mean, he definitely looks very thin.
I mean, he looked okay when he showed up on the final couple of seasons of Sons of Anarchy, but I saw a picture of him from earlier this year where he was giving an interview, and Jesus, he's not aging well. The age is catching up to him quickly.
Yeah, I've noticed with a lot of those stars, it's like as soon as they get hit by age, it's a quick downhill.
Well, I mean, with Peter Weller, it's the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long, and that dude, his candle burned so very brightly. He was Buckaroo Banzai. He was the William S. Burroughs stand-in for Naked Lunch, and he was a RoboCop. What more could you ask of a guy?
And I think he has like a degree in history. Didn't he have like a series?
Oh yeah, no, he's a smarty pants too.
Yeah. Other things I found out, supposedly this year, the second season for Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex 2045 is coming out.
I can't believe that got a second season. I can't.
Dude.
I can't believe that got a second season. Cowboy Bebop didn't. Oh my God, that makes me mad.
I liked it. I mean, to me, it was better than the Scarlett Johansson movie. I
don't know that I can agree with that statement. Because the Scarlett Johansson movie, I don't know. You know me.
Yep.
I have explained many times how I like movies for different reasons than what I'm supposed to like them for. And the Scarlett Johansson Ghost in the Shell, well, the movie wasn't that great. Like, the plot and the story wasn't that great.
The visuals
of the movie were
amazing.
Fucking phenomenal.
I agree.
Like, the world they created, that was as cyberpunk as it gets. And I can watch that movie over and over again just to catch up on what's going on in the background.
I completely agree, but it did not save it from Scarlett Jo's acting, in my opinion. I
like her acting. I have no problem with Scarlett Johansson whatsoever. I think she's a lovely young lady, and I think she's a good actress.
Like, what is it? Hail Caesar. I loved her character in Hail Caesar. That was great. Even Jojo Rabbit. You know,
dude,
I'm
Jojo
not saying
Rabbit, she made me. I openly wept at her fate in Jojo Rabbit.
I'm not saying that she's a bad actor. I just said
there was
that.
Go ahead.
That scene, that movie. I don't know. I just didn't like how she portrayed the Major.
See, I come at it from this angle. She worked with what she was given, and the script for that movie was atrocious. They tried to remake the Mamoru Oshii film, which I have a very unpopular opinion of that film as it is. But her being monotonous in Scarlett Johansson portraying that character monotonously and really one note, like, that falls completely in line with the original anime. I mean, that's been my biggest complaint about everything Mamoru Oshii has ever done, is he makes these beautiful frickin' animated films, and then their main characters do nothing but stand around and talk monotonously. It's infuriating to me. That's why I think Standalone Complex, the original series, and of course Second Gig were the best on-screen versions of Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah. So you didn't like Arise?
So, I mean, I did, but it's such a different feel to Arise.
It was kind of like a prequel.
I prefer Arise to the Mamoru Oshii films. And again, I love the Mamoru Oshii films, but I love it more for what's going on in the background. In fact, Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, it came with the version I had came with a second disc where it was just music set to like the backgrounds of Innocence scrolling by. And I've watched that more than I've watched the actual movie.
Yep.
Heck, I used to have that going on in the background when I ran Cyberpunk.
So prior to us broadcasting, we come to find out that Wisdom's favorite character of 2045 is actually the voice of V.
Yeah.
Jeremy Lay. So
Here's where you get into why I dislike 2045 so much. That character is just the worst little Mary Sue bullshit character there ever was.
and I just find, I mean, when I read that on IMDb, I was just shocked. Like, wait a minute, she played her? Like, that is, well, the voice actor definitely has talent if she can portray different voices of that magnitude. Because V was definitely a complete opposite of Purin.
Yeah.
Which, kudos to her.
I mean, it shows some range. You can play one of the coolest video game characters of all time and then turn around and play one of the most obnoxiously annoying anime characters of all time. I mean, star power. There you go.
Yep. There was one other thing that supposedly is coming out, but I don't. I thought I had it saved in one of my tabs, but apparently not.
They are. It looks like. Now, granted, this is CDPR we're talking about, but it supposedly the PS5 version of 2077 is coming out next month, along with a fairly large update for 2077 itself.
Yep. We'll see what's
There's that to look for.
And again, this upcoming patch, if you think about it, there was like probably half a dozen or a dozen of the modders were hired by CDPR. So
yeah, straight up recruiting.
Maybe they're working and implementing some of the mods they put into the code, which would be nice to see, like fixing all the stuff that's that's broken, specifically around the talent tree, and also improvements to the AIs. I've been sort of dabbling back into the game with some of the mods. One of the mods is affects the weather, so you can set certain weathers to happen more often, which gives it a much different atmosphere. Like a yellow haze throughout the city gives it almost more of an eerie feel to it. So, and I would suggest, and I don't know if I have a list of the mods, but one is like a major big mod that kind of overhauls the whole system. Food is more relevant. Armor, so the armor slots are different, so only like movement affecting enhancements can be put in boots and shoes, versus like just putting armadillo all over your body. So maybe, hopefully, CDPR is going to implement some of that. But speaking of CDPR, so this past December, CDPR actually put on sale Witcher 3, and I decided to buy it, and just to do a comparison. Witcher 3 was definitely a more well-polished game, in my opinion, than Cyberpunk was, but I enjoyed it. I just finished it after 400 hours of playing it. But again, I think the stories were comparable. I think there was a little more nuances in Witcher than Cyberpunk, but I think with Witcher they already had 2 under their belt, and it was kind of a growing experience from there.
I agree with that. I think Witcher 3 was the ultimate bit of polish for a franchise they had been working on for quite a while. I think them switching to a different engine for Cyberpunk was probably, I'm not going to say it was a mistake necessarily, but it moved them in a completely different direction as far as, the focus of the mechanics. Not just going from third person to first person, although that was unfortunate. But also just the way you interacted with the world. There seemed to be more going on with Witcher 3 in terms of, how the world just around you kind of interacted with you.
Yep. Yeah, and it seemed like the city changed, or the world changed as you went through it, versus Cyberpunk 2020, which it only changed to the characters you were talking to, and not really affecting outside of that. Like, I think...
I mean, as we've spoken many times, a lot of the problem with Witcher, they worked on it at their own pace, that nobody rushed them. They didn't try and set out this giant media blitz ahead of the storm. With Cyberpunk, they tried to make it this giant thing before they were ever ready to release the game, and then they kind of trapped themselves.
Yeah.
Whereas if they'd stayed more low-key until it was actually time to release the game, things probably would have gone a lot smoother for them.
Yeah.
That, and if they didn't try to change the entire focus of the game in the third quarter.
Well, I think the problem was that marketing team got involved. It was like,
Yeah, that, and they hired, one of the most beloved screen personalities to star in their game. Then they realized, oh my God, well, we paid all this money for Keanu Reeves. We better rewrite the game to focus on him completely.
Well, I also think the hype from how Witcher evolved and started becoming, or promoting CDPR into such a powerhouse of a game development company, they figured, our next thing is going to be awesome and it's going to change the world, so let's get marketing behind it and make sure it, gets sent out and not be a sleeper hit, Which, to me, sleeper hits are usually the ones who are more successful than, the ones that are over broadcast.
Yeah, the sleeper hits are the ones you talk about. They're the ones you tell your friends about. If you overhype something, anything, no matter how good it is, you can't live up to that hype. You can't... I don't know. I'm one of those guys that the more you try and hype something up to me, the more my opinion turns negative towards it. It's not a cool part about myself, but it's just the way I view things. Like, if you tell me about this band and don't shut the hell up about them, I'm probably not gonna like it. I'll be predisposed to have a negative experience with them because you've gotten to the point where you've already annoyed me. That's why I don't like Star Trek. The damn fans.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, because I remember there was Batman, the one with Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton, when that first came out, and everyone was dressing up like that, and they saw that monstrosity that was put on the screen. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't that good either. Like, it was overhyped.
I mean, it was better than any Batman that had been on screen beforehand.
Yep.
But in the end, like, it was just Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson, and it was Mr. Mom with a muscle suit on.
Yep. And then
there's only...
The other thing that I thought was overhyped was, and it was, I don't know, I'm a bit of a sadist, not a sadist. What's the opposite of a sadist? One who likes to see people in pain. Was so
that's the sadist. The sadist likes to see people in pain. The masochist likes to be in pain.
Yeah, that's right. So then I guess I'm a little bit of a sadist, because when they were when the first episode 1 was kind of being broadcast, and everyone was like, "Ah, Darth Maul, Darth Maul." I go into the movie theater. You have like a quarter of the people all in Darth Maul like makeup, and at the end when he dies like a chump, and everybody and all those people who were like dressed up as him were like shoulders down, head down, like what the hell? How did he die so quick?
That was the biggest. That was the longest reigning bit of disappointment among a fan base till Daenerys Targaryen turned out to be a villain in the last couple of episodes of Game of Thrones.
That
like
was
all
a
these people who
disappointment.
named their children Daenerys or Khaleesi,
Yeah.
and then they have that.
Yeah, that was.
See, I'm a sadist because I enjoy that moment.
Well, I didn't enjoy it because it was just like, how could the writers think that was a good way of ending this series? It's just,
Capricious. What's funny is I don't really hate Michael Keaton. I just didn't care for his portrayal of Batman. I loved his portrayal of the Vulture, and he made some great comedies in the '80s.
Johnny Dangerously.
Yeah, Johnny Dangerously was fantastic. This is my gun. It shoots through schools and the bus behind it and trees.
Yeah, that was a sleeper hit of a comedy.
Yeah, that is like nobody ever remembers Johnny Dangerously.
You fucking asshole.
Don't call me stupid, Johnny. My mother called me stupid once.
Yeah. Other cyberpunk things going out. So there was a post from about Combat Zone Kickstarter. I think we talked about that before the show was on back in January 12th, and those who actually bought into the Kickstarter. So supposedly it's going to be another 4 to 5 weeks before all the plastics are done, and then after that it's packaging. Supposedly the rule book has been completed with all the graphics and being shipped off and signed off and heading to the printer. So this was 2-3 weeks ago. So probably another 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm figuring like mid-March, maybe beginning of April.
Apparently they got hit. Apparently they're running out of Central Virginia, and they got hit hard and were out of power for like a week, so that kind of slowed stuff down. But they got everything up and running again, and we're all excited to get our products.
Yep. And unlike some companies, they're actually doing everything in-house, including the miniatures.
Plus, they keep us updated.
Yep. Well,
not quite as often as we would like, but I don't think any company in the world does do that. You could update me by the hour, and I'd be all like, well, what's happened since then? Well, what's going on?
You would have made a great project manager for a development team. Yeah, it's going to take me a day to fix that. Okay, an hour later. Have you fixed it? I told you it's going to take me a day. No.
I mean, really, it just all harkens back to being on the back seat on a long trip. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? When are we going to be there?
Yep. And Cyberpunk Uncensored's Kickstarter is making some progress. Looks like they're putting some updates out. Again, they're closed a little sooner than Combat Zone, but my experience with any Kickstarter is don't expect to see anything within the year.
Yeah, I mean, and the products from Cybernation Uncensored, I mean, they're neat products. Looking at the stuff just kind of makes me sad because I had dice trays and dice boxes where the lids were dice trays.
Yep.
that I'd made for my players that these guys just stomped into shards.
Christ. Yeah, shit
Man,
like that.
I mean, they threw dice all over the place.
In the storage unit?
Yeah, in the storage unit, they broke tons of stuff, man. It's
And your
like
unit wasn't the only one, right?
No, they not only is my unit not the only one that got hit, but like the facility itself, there were other facilities that got hit. It's just I'm the only one they stole cool stuff from. Everybody else they stole like tools and shit.
Well, hopefully.
Which, I mean, granted, for those guys, that's their livelihood, and
Yep.
it was one of those guys actually who like discovered the thieves in the first place. Like, so I owe him a great deal. But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, these guys pissed me off. Sorry, didn't mean to get on that again.
And other cyberpunk news, we had a broadcast from, or a update from Artal Sorian around
Yeah,
Red.
big news from Artal Sorian. They're talking about new stuff.
So first is Tales of the Red, which looks like there's a bunch of scenarios from a few people.
People have been begging for that kind of thing for a while now. I mean, I'm hoping it's new, original stuff. But either way, you know, print product is print product, and extra scenarios for GMs to get their games off the ground.
Yep.
That's always going to be appreciated.
Yeah, and the two authors I have gamed with. One is Mike Pondsmith. Not sure if he's going to do what he ran at the cons. And I also played in con games with Jay Parker. He had... Actually, I played in a few of his games. They were interesting. The last one, which I think was last year at TotalCon, was basically he ran the game as everyone is playing basically a cyber psycho.
That's an interesting
And
concept.
I forgot what the title of the game was. It was like Thrill Kill. So it was kind of like it's kind of like some of the Asian shows that are out there that are like game shows of killing people, like Squid Games.
Oh, like Battle
and
Royale.
Battle Royale, Alice in Borderlands.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So just that concept. So all of us played like psychos with like low empathy, low humanity, and the object for us was to get as big of a high body count as we possibly could. My character was an ex-bozo. So, however, I didn't expect to have one of the people on the team, who was also a friend of Jay's, constantly message him on his phone saying how much he was going, or how he was betraying the rest of the party. And not only did he get the highest body count because he killed us also with explosions, he also racked up another high body count. So I was kind of disappointed that he would attack one of his group mates, but I got to give it to him that he got the highest body count. Yeah, so Jay's games, the two that I were in, three were pretty fun. He's pretty good at running games. And of course Mike is
So
Mike is Mike.
go ahead.
Mike is Mike.
Are Jay Parker and Jay Libby the same person?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
That's
Like one's his pen name and
okay. I've never understood what's going on.
I've never
with that,
asked him that directly. Like, are you which do you prefer? So I don't know if he has like a professional name versus his real name, and I don't know which is which. But yes, as far as I can tell, they're the same man.
Okay.
Sorry, Jay, if you're listening. We're revealing your altered identity. So yeah, it looks like a scenario pack coming out in spring, so that's right around the corner. 2 or 3 months, which is great. And then the next thing that's coming out, which is supposed to be in winter.
They're giving us an update on Black
And
Chrome.
Black Chrome that I've been hearing about for the past actually more than 8 years. Because he was talking about it.
For a while.
Yeah, when the first Cyberpunk 2077 thing dropped, the recruitment video. So that was back in 2013.
Yeah,
So,
I remember Mike came on to the Cyberpunk, the CDPR forums for Cyberpunk 2077 back when they were a separate part of like a separate website, and announced he joined the forums just to announce the Black Chrome book, and at that time it was supposed to like bridge the gap between 2020 and 2077. I guess everything that was going to go in there got shuffled into red, and they started all over. I don't know. You've got the inside track on this guy, so.
yeah, it's capricious. We never done a 2,000 person kill. We got in the hundreds though for that game. But yeah, so it looks like they're talking about having new armor sets, vehicles, cyberwares, fashion, apps, linear frames, and items to boost your campaign, which is going to be interesting.
I mean, they're talking about it being heavily illustrated, which has all my nerve endings going a twitchy. And the fact that they have advertised it as having new weapons, new armor sets, vehicles, cyberware gives me some hope that they're kind of expanding on the rules and allowing for more individualized gear and weapons and catering to my tech porn tendencies.
Yep. And then
I can hope.
And the next thing that seems to be working on, they didn't quite give a date on, is Danger Gal Dossier. Sounds like it's kind of like an Edge Runner, or Edge Runner Incorporated.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting from that. It's
Book of NPCs, I think.
I like the idea of a book of NPCs. They've certainly released a lot of them for Red. I think having, a stack of NPCs to pull from and throw at your players every now and then, either these are just dudes that they encounter.
Yep.
I always like that. Hell, I employ and put so many of my players' characters onto my site, onto Datafortress2020, in my various source books as NPCs they can encounter. So I'm a big fan of that idea.
Yep. And it makes it easier for the GM. I need an NPC real quick. A well thought out NPC, as opposed to, going through a random generator or just, throwing some arbitrary dice at it. And then the last thing is Rogue Street Weapons, which seems like it's going to be similar to the program deck, and that it's going to be a gear deck containing 108 weapons, weapon attachments, and ammo types. This card will contain all the full stats, so...
I dig the net running deck. I dig the idea of just, oh, you want a gun? Here's a card. Like, all of the information is right here. It's there. You can, stick it in your character sheet's little baggie. I like props. I like being able to hand character stuff with some art on it and be all like, there you go.
Yep. And then they also had the hardened mooks as a download that you can get now.
Yeah.
Which again is a great resource, because now you have some quick NPCs you can throw at the party.
Some upper tier guys that, they got to use the big guns on.
Yeah, and
Or they got to be real smart.
Yeah, and then they're going to be doing the Interface Reds again, a Volume 2 and possibly a Volume 3 for this year, depending upon probably what DLCs they do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that. I still haven't gotten my copy of Interface Red. I ordered one. It never really showed up. I'm not ordering from that company again. I'm not going to talk about them because it's with all that's going on in the world. It might be a very. It might not be their fault at all. Just.
Yep.
But I still haven't gotten my copy, so I need to. But I like the idea of it. I like the idea of the stuff that they've been released for free. They're giving out as these, bound physical copies of stuff. That makes me happy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're putting effort in it, right? The art looks great, even for these downloads. I know.
Yeah, they're not just printing them off and sending them to us straight from the screen. They're like you said, they're putting effort into it. They're giving us a nice product.
Yeah. Whereas my site, I'm very lean and mean on the styling of my site.
Whereas my site, I may go overboard with that just a tad, just a little bit. There may be too much going on my site.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I saw in one of the Discords, a person was asking about one of the images you got from your site. I told them you should really bug you directly to find out.
Oh, by all means, bug me all the time about that shit. I love talking about it. Any idea what image it was? I'll answer that question right now.
Again, it was a couple of weeks ago, but someone replied and gave him an answer of where the source was. I think it might have been from either concept art for a computer game. Basically, it was like a squad of soldiers or mercenaries in military fatigues.
Man, I wish I'd seen that.
Well, I think the other problem is they didn't know you were on Discord. Is always another problem, and no one always thinks to @ somebody. Because I've seen that.
I mean,
as a lurker, I've seen people comment about me, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm here." Oh.
There's a guy on Reddit who's putting together a database of locations for cyberpunk games that aren't necessarily tied to any IP. He reached out to me about some of the locations I put out there for Autumn Blade. I would assume he's talking mostly about at the Nakajima Plaza and all the stores involved in there. But yeah, he reached out to me on Reddit, and I feel bad because it took me forever to get a hold of him. I've had a rough couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm always happy to talk to anybody about my site, about anything. I may not get you immediately. I've got a pretty overzealous spam filter. But I will almost always get back to you.
Yep. There's also one thing that came up at least from me, was my wife suggested I read this one book called Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. Supposedly it's a cyberpunk book written by Haruki Murakami. And she said it is very cyberpunkish. She thinks it should have been an anime or a manga. And she's not a big anime or manga fan, so I need to check it out. Basically, the story behind it is there are people who can store data in their heads, and they're not kind of like what's the thing?
Johnny Mnemonic?
Yeah, kind of like Johnny Mnemonic, in which they don't know what the data is, and they'll just spit it out and not remember it. Yeah, so I need to check that out, but If
What's the
anybody's,
name of that again?
the name of it is Hard Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World.
All right, that is on the list. That sounds pretty cool to me. Haruki Murakami.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a quick, the little thing that they give. Across two parallel narratives, Murakami,
Murakami.
I've taken several years of Japanese and forgotten most of it. Draws readers into a mind-bending universe in which Lauren Bacall, Bob Dylan, a split-brain data processor, a deranged scientist, his shockingly undemurred granddaughter, and various thugs, librarians, and subterranean monsters collide to a dazzling effect. What emerges in a novel that is at once hilariously funny and deeply serious meditation on the nature and use of the mind.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
It sounds vaguely reminiscent of Ready Player One. And I say that in a good way. I actually enjoyed the book Ready Player One. I thought it was grand fun. The movie was pretty disappointing, but it was still neat to see the Akira bike on screen. I'll say that. And it was neat to point out references, but that's really all the movie was, is one reference after another.
Pretty much. A lot of geek culture references.
Yeah, and it was wrapped in a cyberpunk setting. It's a legitimate cyberpunk movie. It's just not a very good one.
Yep, everyone's connected to the net, basically doing brain dance in the alternate world. Yeah, so I don't know. What other topics do you feel like discussing?
I don't know. Let's talk about something happy. Let's talk about
Kittens.
kittens. We love kittens. Man, you can't put me on the spot like this. My brain is just not working.
Oh yeah, well the other thing, if anybody has been checking out the Book of Boba Fett, they did a kind of cyberpunk episode in which they had a gang of cyberpunkers with cybernetics looking very 80s.
Driving Vespa hover bikes, but still, they're pretty cool. Like, I would watch a series about those guys. I'm very loath to ever say, this part of Star Wars is cyberpunk, but, it definitely had some cyberpunk trappings. There are definitely some cyberpunk-ish characters.
Yep. So that was kind of a fun thing.
I'm enjoying Book of Boba Fett. It's more than I expected from it. It's hard to follow The Mandalorian as an act because Mandalorian is just so fucking perfect. But I mean, Boba Fett does its own thing. People complain that he's not the hardcore badass that everybody thought he was, but I mean, all he did in Empire was stand there, and all he did in Jedi was get his ass kicked by a blind dude and then fall into a space butthole.
Comically get his ass kicked by a blind dude. Comically got his ass kicked by a blind dude.
Yeah, just comically. Like, the blind dude wasn't even trying. He's just like, Boba Fett, where? And space butthole.
Yeah, there was parts of Star Wars it's like, oh yeah, this guy's the most deadliest bounty hunter in the universe. The universe.
I mean, we were all like 12 when we saw it, and we just tied that in because he looked so very cool and there was such mystery surrounding the character. We built him up in our heads to be this thing that like the movies didn't necessarily support. And then like all the extended universe stuff tried to make him out to be all this super cool guy. And that's cool. Like he's still a super cool guy. He's just in the Mandalorian in the new Disney Star Wars continuity, which I'm perfectly okay with. He's a much more human character, much more fallible. The only problem I have is that if he was this bounty hunter that survived all this stuff, it's kind of weird to me that like basic hand-to-hand fighting eluded him. That's my one and only complaint.
Yeah, that I didn't understand either. How he was like, you know, he was getting beat up by, you know, the trainees of the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah. I was sad to see the Tusken Raiders. Well, I'm not. We're not going to talk about any of that, so I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody. Another pleasant surprise has been Peacemaker. I don't know if anybody saw the Suicide Squad movie, but John Cena returns as the character Peacemaker in a direct sequel to the Suicide Squad movie. And I'm not going to say it's very cyberpunk. It's not. And they do some of the characters dirty, like Vigilante is not really accurate to what appeared in the comics. The same with Judo Master. But Jesus Christ, Peacemaker is the funniest thing I've watched in a long time.
Yes. Especially from a comic point of view.
Yeah, I mean it's the best thing Disney. It's the best thing DC has done. Peacemaker and Suicide Squad are the best things DC has done, as far as them trying to create a franchise based around the DC universe. Like Jesus, the Justice League movies were fucking awful, but if they'd had James Gunn to do them, they probably would have been pretty darn good. He understands the characters, he understands the concepts, and he understands the heart and soul of what, you know, fans are looking for in these kind of goofy offshoot characters. I don't know if he can do serious, because I've never seen him really try. So I don't know that he could really do Batman or Superman. But he can definitely do the weird offshoot characters. He could do a Justice League based off the Kevin Maguire and J.M. DeMatteis run, the Justice League International, which is the best iteration of Justice League there ever was. Kevin Maguire's art alone made that so. But yeah, funny Justice League was best Justice League.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of... And that's, I think, some of the things that I think the movie are starting to get into, like how Deadpool worked, right? Because the people who were reading comics as kids are now adults and now get adult humor. And that comics are no longer just for kids.
I mean, it seems like the problem has either been they're trying to make the movies for kids with characters that aren't for kids, or they're trying to make movies for adults, on the DC side anyway, with characters who are for kids. Superman, you should never make a Superman movie that children can't watch.
Yep.
I mean, it's fine if you're doing some Elseworlds type thing, but in your main... if you're trying to set up the DC universe as a film franchise, DC needs to be accessible and enjoyable by like small children as well as adults. He needs to be set up for everybody. That's what Richard Donner got perfect about him. He may have had some weird stuff going on in Superman Returns, but... or not Superman Returns, Superman 2. but he understood the character, the concept of the character, and what made the character great.
Yep.
So you can't, like, not every Batman movie needs to be this super serious, like, how can we make Batman more realistic? Well, you can't, because when you do, you lose. Batman's super fucking rich. He's a guy who flies around in a bat plane and like has supercomputers and all sorts of stuff. The more grittier you make that, or the more gritty you make that, you're kind of taking away part of what makes Batman Batman. Like, it's cool that Batman is a super martial artist, but when you're taking that away from him too and just making him like, oh, okay, well, he keeps getting injured, now he's got like back problems and arthritis, and I'm all like, well, I don't want to watch a movie of Batman with arthritis.
Well, I think
I don't need that much realism in Batman.
When Frank Miller kind of did Batman, and tried to get it a little more grittier, because I think Frank Miller in the combat scene was starting. He kind of like shifted comics themes and stories into a darker realm. Well,
I mean, it was a cross between Frank Miller and Alan Moore with Watchmen. I mean, Frank Miller, his work with Batman in his early work with Batman, like Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One, were fantastic, and they did inject reality into Batman. Like, Batman got injured. He like with Dark Knight Returns, it was an old retired Batman who was coming out of it, and he had to deal with a lifetime worth of injuries. But he still had the crazy bat planes and the bat tanks and all that kind of stuff. The giant bat cave with the supercomputers and yeah, when you take that away, you lose part of the bat. Or when you make it too realistic, you lose part of what makes Batman Batman. I mean, with Christopher Nolan's movies, the Christian Bale Batmans, he went from Batman Year One in the first movie to like Batman Return, or Batman the Dark Knight Rises, or the Dark Knight Returns in the third movie, and that's like a space of 5 years that goes from like super vigilante crime fighter dude to broken destroyed guy in the space of like 5 years. Yeah. Which is just, it's too much realism in a movie with such ridiculous concepts as it in the first place.
Yep. And just getting into like Frank Miller, speaking of Frank Miller, he actually did a series called Ronin back in the 80s, and that was a very cyberpunk series. So
Ronin was fantastic. It always freaks me out when people recommend Samurai Jack to me, and I'm all like, they stole that whole premise, the whole plot and premise from Ronin.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, it was kind of a story about it was kind of like a parallel story between a samurai from, feudal Japan and a guy who's living in, dystopian future of New York, who, I can't remember the full plot, but basically he was an invalid, the kid, and he just read about this one samurai, and eventually he was got part of a corporation that kind of was helping him become better in a sense, and eventually like nanotechnology turned him into that samurai, which then he decided to go through New York City and become a vigilante, or do the honorable thing like a lone wolf samurai was. So, but yeah, I haven't read that in a while, but just hearing Frank Miller's name, I was like, oh yeah, he did a cyberpunk comic series way back in the day.
It was just Frank Miller's birthday the other day. So happy birthday, Frank.
Happy birthday, Frank.
Frank Miller was one of my first favorite writers in comics, and more so for his Daredevil stuff than anything else.
Yep. I actually was a fan of his prior to Daredevil. There was a DC series called Warlord, which kind of was like this
Yeah, I remember
science
Warlord very well.
fantasy. Yeah, so I was a big fan of that comic book, and in the early days, Frank wrote for that.
That's where I first got exposed to Mike Grell's art, who then went on to
Oh yeah,
do for DC. He went on to do Green Arrow Longbow Hunters, which did for Green Arrow what Frank Miller's Year One did for Batman. And of course, then Mike Grell went on to do.
I think I just got confused. You're right. It was Grell who did Warlord, not Frank Miller.
Yeah,
But both of them were great
I mean, I
artists.
think Frank Miller did like an episode or two
Yeah.
of Green Arrow or of Warlord. But Mike Grell's John Sable Freelance I was a huge fan of that.
Yeah, I remember that series. One of my friends was a big fan of it and kind of got me into it. So, yeah.
That was it came out about the same time as that Shatter comic, which was pure cyberpunk, and it was like one of the very first comics that were ever created digitally. Like the art was all created digitally. At the time, the DC even like ventured into that. They had a Batman digital comic called Digital Justice, and it was done by Pepe Moreno, who was really, he did a lot of like cyberpunk and post-apocalypse comics in the 80s. He's like a European artist and writer who he worked with the Heavy Metal magazine group, which was its own thing. But he put out books like Generation Zero and Rebel, and just really fantastic stuff. I am so far down the rabbit hole of ranting right now. I don't know where we began.
Yeah.
Iron Man. They did an Iron Man digital book. I don't remember off the top of my head who did that, if that was Pepe Moreno too or not. But yeah, I want to say that was like '89.
Well, it says Shattered was between 85 and 88. And it was by First Comics. I've never heard of it.
It probably was First Comics, which then got sold, like all the First stuff got sold to Eclipse at some point, which then folded into Dark Horse. No, First stayed its own thing, but they did both get folded in to Dark Horse Comics around like 92, 93. I truly loved those companies' books. First is where I got my first taste of Lone Wolf and Cub. And then Eclipse, of course, in their Studio Proteus line, that's who brought over books like Appleseed and all the original manga that first started coming over to the States. Studio Proteus through Eclipse, and then Viz as their own company was putting out books like Fist of the North Star, and no, Eclipse was putting out Fist of the North Star. Viz was putting out books like Urusei Yatsura and Ranma One Half and stuff like that. I get so confused. I'm old and feeble, and there are cold, and there are wolves here. So
Yeah, been as you speaking, I like looked up Sable, and they actually did a TV series back in 1987.
they did. It didn't resemble the comics at all. It was really, really weird. And it didn't last very long. Like, it was already over. Like, I got to watch one episode of it after I finally heard about it before they canceled it.
Russo was in it.
Yeah, a very young, like about the time she did. I don't remember if it was before or after she did Lethal Weapon 3. It was
would have
right
been
around
after.
there. So like a still really young Renee Russo. There was
It was her TV debut. That's interesting.
it had a like I my memories of it are vague, but I remember being really confused as to why he was flying around in like a custom aircraft. Now I could be confusing that with a different show, but I want to say it was about the same time that Mantis was on, which was another show that I really loved Mantis, and that only lasted like 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah. What else can we talk about? I don't want to get too bored and start beating a dead cat, you know? Or at least beating a live cat. I think I have 1 or 2 around somewhere walking around in my house.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they do, is they walk around and stalk and try to figure out exactly what kind of trouble they can cause.
Yeah. I think this show is towards the end because we're starting to ramble about very random stuff.
Just comics in general at this point. I keep trying to veer it back into cyberpunk, but really there's not a whole lot we can say about shows like Mantis. I mean, it was pretty cyberpunk, dude in an armored suit, all that, and jacked into his spine so he could walk again. Used it to fight crime.
Yep. Do you have any other recommendations to any cyberpunk old movies that you think we haven't covered?
Movies for cyberpunk? I was talking about, somebody asked me in one of the Discord channels on Cyberpunk Uncensored. They messaged me directly and asked me why Nemesis was my favorite movie, and I had to explain that it's not that it's my favorite movie. Blade Runner is my favorite cyberpunk movie, but Nemesis is the one that I have the most fun watching because it's the one that feels most like
a cyberpunk game.
Like playing Cyberpunk 2020 in the early days.
Yep.
Like that's it just from start to finish it has that vibe. And it's just great fun. It's a mindless action film with cyberpunk trappings. So yeah, it's the one I rewatch the most. But there's also movies like Cherry 2000. I spoke with another dude about that. I'm a huge fan of Circuitry Man. Like, I think that movie is so freaking underrated in the cyberpunk genre. Is it a great movie? No, but it's a great cyberpunk movie. The villain's a dude who's got interface plugs all over his head. It's Vernon Wells, who, you know, Wes from Road Warrior, and the villain from Commando.
I don't think I've ever seen Circuitry Man.
Oh, you should definitely see Circuitry Man.
I'll see if I can find it on one of the streaming services.
I'm not aware of it on any of the streaming services. You may be able to purchase it streaming from Hulu. I'm not sure, but I haven't found it, and it really surprises me that it's not on like Tubi or something like that, which just has just ridiculous amounts of movies. Sure, you got to watch ads, but I can deal with an ad to watch, you know, old stuff like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's like on like YouTube, a lot of old movies.
I like Fortress with Christopher Lambert. Yeah, it'd probably be on YouTube, by the way. You could probably find at least clips of it. The Fortress films with Christopher Lambert, those were good, fun cyberpunk stuff.
Yeah. Would you consider Cube cyberpunk?
Cube itself, no, but Cube Zero is ridiculously cyberpunk. I don't know why I make that distinction, but the other Cube movies just seem like weird horror movies. But Cube Zero, it definitely skews into that. It lets you see more of what's going on behind the scenes, so you can see how things are working, which
Right.
to me makes it more cyberpunk. I love Cube Zero.
It was kind of reminiscent of Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, it was. It was very reminiscent of Cabin in the Woods. In fact, well, really the other way around. When I was watching Cabin in the Woods, all I could think of was Cube Zero, or the Cube franchise as a whole. Free Jack. Nobody ever talks about Free Jack anymore.
Oh my God!
But that was
It was
a
definitely
pretty fun cyberpunk movie.
It was, but Mick Jagger should never wear a helmet.
I mean, Mick Jagger should never be behind the camera at all. Like, I mean, the Rolling Stones were great and all, but Mick Jagger he's like a talking suitcase. Like, that dude.
And I mean, the cast for that movie was pretty good. I mean, you had Emilio Estevez. At the time
that was one of his last roles too.
Yeah, and he was kind
like
of
last starring
popular.
role.
And then there was Anthony Hopkins,
Mick
Jagger, Rene Russo. So
it was a damn good movie. I mean, it was goofy in the way that only early '90s movies could be, but it was more than enjoyable.
Yep. Did you see Upgrade?
I loved Upgrade.
Upgrade
has one of the coolest like death kill 'em scenes I've in movies. Period. When he makes the dude bite down on his neck and like knees him from behind. Yeah, it turns the dude into a human Pez dispenser.
All right, I gotta watch it.
I highly recommend Upgrade. Yeah.
One of the movies I enjoyed recently, which kind of was, some people might not enjoy it, but Hardcore Harry, I thought was very cyberpunkish.
It was very cyberpunkish, but it's the same problem with playing a first-person game. There's only so long I can look at that before I get a headache.
Yep.
I liked the plot of it, what little there was. It was a fun movie to watch, but at the same time, it's takes some ibuprofen with you.
Or what is it called? What's the D for the motion sickness? Dramamine?
Oh, what'd you say?
Dramamine?
Yeah, Dramamine. That's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, that was... And to me, some of those shots were just crazy. Like when he was throwing a grenade in a van and he got blown out of it, and then he was like in a chair shooting at people.
Yeah, if you can handle the first person perspective, it's a great fun movie. Like, you will have a good time watching it if you can handle the first person perspective.
Yep. I know some people can't. I remember I was showing my brother the latest version of Quake. He was sitting next to me, and then all of a sudden he says he just got up and left immediately, and I started hearing him puking in the bathroom. I'm like, what the hell's happened? He's like, dude, I
believe that.
I saw the action, and I just suddenly felt really sick. I was like, wow.
Yeah. I'm always going to say Nemesis Cat.
Yes.
If
you're a Cyberpunk game fan, you got to enjoy Nemesis.
Yeah, you just have to. It's the closest you're ever going to find to Cyberpunk 2020 on the screen. It just is.
Yeah, and the quality of acting is the same quality as your players. So it's not that hard-fetched to, be a little more immersive into it. So...
I mean, there's a lot of anime I could recommend. Angel Cop.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always going to recommend like the standards: Bubblegum Crisis, Akira, things like that. But some of the lesser known anime out there that falls into the genre, like Angel Cop, City Hunter. It's more of a cop thing, but it crosses over sometimes.
And was there? I forget the name of it. Is it Goku?
Midnight Hunter Goku. That's definitely some
Yeah.
good stuff right there. Cyber City Odio 88. That you're never gonna be disappointed watching that if you're a fan of cyberpunk. 80 Police.
Psycho Squad. I think it's Psycho Squad.
Psycho Squad, Kite, Iria Zerum. I mean, there's always good stuff out there to find and watch.
Yeah, Kite. When I first watched it, kind of.
Kite is about the only anime in the world that I'll say you're better off watching the edited, censored version.
Yes, it's a little.
It's got some of the best action scenes I've ever seen in anime. Like it ranks up there with the Borg fighting the soldiers in Black Magic M66. But yeah, you can't. I cannot. It's got some parts that'll make you really squick out. Like
I cannot condone.
It's borderline. I'm not. It's not even borderline hentai. It's straight hentai, and it's really like unpleasant in its hentai.
Yes.
Yeah. It's watch the censored version. You won't feel like you have to like scrub your mind with bleach afterwards.
I think they did a live action, like a Western.
They did. It
series
had Samuel L. Jackson in it.
Yep. Minus some of the.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Japanese
the live action
mentality.
doesn't have the quick version. They did a sequel to Kite, and I don't remember it having as much of the squick either.
Yeah.
And they did, like the same guy did another series called Mezzo Forte, which is also very cyberpunk, and I don't recall it being as squicky either.
Yeah,
and of course, the same director also did the second film in the Megazone 23 series, which it itself is fairly cyberpunk and badass.
We're not recommending the hentai. We're recommending the edited version of the hentai.
We are recommending to avoid the hentai.
We went through it and found it quite disturbing, and no one really needs to go through it from us elders telling you should not go through it. Because it is not...
Yeah, I don't squick easily, but it squicks me.
It's... It definitely is not something that adds to the story.
No, in fact, it kind of for me it detracts from it. Like there's just only so much sexual brutality I can take, and I mean I can watch. Kite squicked me out more than watching Clockwork Orange, if that tells you anything.
And to me, Clockwork Orange is even tamed to some of today's standards.
Yeah.
Back in the day, yeah, it was pretty intense. My mom told me a story about how my father went to go see it, and when he came back, he told my mom, "You're never going to go see that movie ever."
Yeah, I've got a similar story about it with my parents.
So. But again, at that day and age, it was definitely something that was very new and interesting.
It definitely pushed lines, pushed the borders of what was acceptable. You can find Wheels of Fire on Tubi. It's not necessarily a cyberpunk, but it's tangential intentionally related. It's like I said, it's a Mad Max ripoff. Always good stuff.
What was the one about the cyberbed? Rosion? Rosion 2?
About the what?
The cyberbed.
Cyberbed. Rujin Z.
Yes.
That's a very underrated cyberpunk anime that, like, it's not your typical stuff. Like, it's not an action film. It's about a bed that like gains like a hospital bed that gains its own sentience and kind of goes on a weird rampage with the invalid strapped down to it. It's good fun to watch it. I highly recommend Rujin Z.
Black Magic M66 was definitely something that you could take and convert into a cyberpunk game pretty darn easily.
I mean, Black Magic M66 is basically the anime version of Terminator. It has literally almost nothing to do with the manga Black Magic by Masamune Shirow, other than like the same robot gets kind of shown in Black Magic in the manga. Like, thematically, they're nothing alike. Thematically, Black Magic is a supernatural based manga. Black Magic, the anime, is pure cyberpunk. Some renegade robot android things go on a rampage, and the very first fight scene you see is one of the finest animated fight scenes in history. Like, and then there's a scene. They have this weird electromagnet they use to keep the robot at bay.
Yep.
And there's a scene where the protagonist is in an elevator with the robot trying to get to her. And she keeps using this magnet to push it back. And the premise sounds kind of wonky, but it is one of the finest animated scenes I've ever seen. I watch a ton of animated content, and it is mind-blowing how far ahead of the scale that one scene is. If you haven't seen Black Magic M66, run, don't walk to whatever you can find that'll play it. I think it's probably on YouTube. Buy it on DVD if you still have physical media. You won't be disappointed.
Yep. Then you have Armitage, which was a pretty good series. Let's talk about
Armitage is like an animated. It's like an anime version of Blade Runner meets Total. Well, not meets Total Recall, but Blade Runner. Basically, it's just an animated version of Blade Runner meets any standard '80s action film, but it's done in a really well done way. The main protagonist, Armitage herself, you'll fall in love with her. I know I did. There's 2 films in the series, and they're both just phenomenally good. If you liked Battle Angel Alita, either the anime or the live action film, or just the manga itself, you'll like Armitage.
And of course, you have the Dirty Pair.
I'm torn on the Dirty Pair. The anime is very good, and it's got cyberpunk elements. The original novels were more pure science fiction-y. And the anime, it just has cyberpunk elements. It's straight up like far future science fiction. But there was an American manga done by Adam Ward, and it was the first. It wasn't necessarily the first example of Americans trying to do the manga style. I want to say that honor goes to Ben Dunn and Ninja High School. I could be wrong. There could have been something before that, but that was the first one that attained any real popularity. But Adam Warren's Dirty Pair is the first one that really spoke to me as far as like this is it is in fact the only American thing done in manga style that I actually consider to be manga.
Yep. It's high praise.
It's gorgeous, and he only ever did miniseries of it, but he did like 6 of them. Some very, very short, like an issue or 2, and some 4, 5, 6 issues long. The detail he put into his art, it's up there. It's up there. He was in fact one of the few people when they were putting out when Eclipse and Studio Proteus were putting out the very first volume of the the imported version of Appleseed. For book 2, they didn't have the color art by Shiro. Like, they had outpaced him. So they hired American artists, and he was one of the very few of the 5-issue series that got to do a cover. It was him and Arthur Adams. Wow, I'm racking my brain trying to remember who did the other issue.
Dude,
it might have just been him and Arthur.
You're like a fountain of anime info.
Yeah, I tend to soak up lots of information about stuff that will never make me any money at all. If it's something that I could actually use to better my station in life, I'll never remember it. But if it's some useless shit, I soak that stuff up like a sponge.
Nice. And the other anime I really liked was Ergo Proxy, just because of mostly the art.
Ergo Proxy's good. It's dark though, like it's really dark. Both in terms of art and the story, like it's.
Yep.
You got to pay attention. That's all I'll say, and you gotta have. Yeah, you got to pay attention.
I had to watch it a couple times because trying to read through the subtitles and watch all the action was definitely a challenge that required me to watch it multiple times. And still,
yeah, and because the art itself is so dark, you kind of miss what's going on the first time through. You got to watch it a couple of times. It's like Blame in that regard, where you just can't always quite figure out what's going on.
Yep. Any other movies or animes or television series that?
I mean, I could go on talking about this stuff all night long. I could talk about like Cyborg 2. With a ridiculously young Angelina Jolie. I
don't think I only saw Cyborg.
Like Hacker's age Angelina Jolie. And the dude who played Stabler on NCIS, or not NCIS, Law and Order, SVU. It wasn't him. It was the guy it was Angelina Jolie and the guy who played Casey Jones in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Elias Cotes.
For some reason, I always get them mixed up. They look almost identical in my mind.
Billy Drago.
No. He was in it. Billy Drago was in it. He was the villain.
There was Elias Cotes, Jack Palance.
Yeah, that's the guy. Jack Palance throws out a line in that movie. If you're gonna dine with the devil, you need a long spoon. I don't know why that stuck with me more than anything else, but yeah.
Yeah, if any GMs out there are looking for someone to kind of inspire an NPC, Jack Palance, and anything he does, just his mannerisms, if he can mimic that, He will be a great NPC for you guys, for any GM
I mean,
to try to imitate.
you can go all the way back to Hawk the Slayer and still be inspired by Jack Palance.
Yes.
Class of 1999. That's one of my favorite cyberpunk underground, like, underrated films that nobody ever talks about.
I remember watching it and thinking, yes, this is definitely a cyberpunk movie. There's a little, I don't know. I guess back in the 80s, it kind of felt like, oh yeah, this could possibly happen. But as I grew older, I'm like, yeah,
Well, I mean,
this is crazy concept.
Malcolm McDowell, Stacy Keach, and what's her name? I love her to death. I'm having a brain fart.
12.
Cleopatra Jones and wow, I have lost my brain completely.
Pam Grier.
Pam Grier, thank you, God. I was gonna melt down. Pam Grier, Stacy Keach, and Malcolm McDowell play the three Terminator teachers, and they chew scenery like no one's business. They chew scenery like it's pizza flavored nachos. But it's still a solid film, and yeah, I mean, it's early '90s action film. I love those though.
Yep.
I'll tell you something that never ever gets talked about by anybody, and that is Six String Samurai. It's one of the Mad Max ripoffs, and it came out, I want to say, late '90s.
Yeah, it was like one of those cult classics.
Yeah, but nobody, it seems completely forgotten today. I mentioned it to people, and they just look at me with, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Then I try and explain to them what it's about. It's like, well, if Billie Holiday, or not Billie Holiday,
Came out in 1998.
Jesus Christ, my brain is shutting down. What'd you say?
Came out in 1998. Starring Jeffrey Falcon, Justin McGear, and Kim D'Angelo.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah, it's definitely like a Mad Max ripoff guy going through a wasteland. I remember watching it. He has like a Billy. Oh, you're thinking of Buddy
Holly. God,
Holly.
thank you.
That's what you
basically
were trying to shoot out your mouth.
Yeah, Buddy Holly wandering through a Mad Max style wasteland with nothing but a guitar and a sword, going to a battle of the bands. It sounds stupid, but it is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, there was one thing that I saw recently that was kind of reminiscent of it. I think it was called Bad Batch. Not the Star Wars animation. It had Jason Momoa in it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Bad Batch, where he's like a cannibal.
Yes, and basically
that was fun.
Yeah, the woman was like, or the main actress, she was like expelled from the city into the wasteland.
Yeah, for a movie I had never heard of, that turned out to be really fun. Prior to watching it.
Holy shit! Jim Carrey was the hermit.
Yeah.
I did not even recognize him in that part.
I am not a fan of Jim Carrey necessarily, but every now and then he'll come through with like a weird cameo and just surprise the shit out of me.
Yeah, I remember seeing Keanu in it, and being like, "Huh, that's interesting that he's in this."
Yeah, between like 2010 and 2015, before John Wick really like when the first John Wick was becoming really popular, Keanu made all these really weird low budget appearances and stuff. There was one I caught on Netflix where he plays this. It's another cyberpunk film where he plays like this corporate dude, and it's you can tell he's just phoning it in. He doesn't like. He just sits in like in front of a blue screen or green screen.
Yep.
And he just kind of phones in the performance where he plays this corporate guy who's leading stuff. But like, it's really weird that like at the absolute height of his career, he's doing all these weird little cameos in like B films that nobody ever sees.
Yeah. And the other thing that gets me is like, he like gets rid of his money like water. Because he's like, yeah, I only keep the money. If I really want something, I'll use the money for that. But otherwise, I'm just gonna donate it all.
Yeah, he donates his money. But he also, on top of that, he makes sure all of the cast members or the crew members of his productions get paid very, very well and compensated for everything that goes on.
Yeah,
he's just, even if you don't like him as an actor, you really have to love the dude for just being a human being. Like he doesn't even like promote what he does. He just does it.
Yep.
Gives away most of his money to charity or other idealistic causes. He's a very humble dude. I got nothing but love for Keanu.
Yeah, so
I got friends who constantly dog on him because they think he's a bad actor, but they're like, they've never seen anything he's done since The Matrix. So I'm just all like, dude, he's moved on from that. He's more than just a guy who says whoa now.
Yep. Yeah, and he's been at least 3 cyberpunk movies. So he is.
Yeah, he is
the poster child for cyberpunk movies, or the poster actor.
Yeah, in the 80s, the cyberpunk, or 80s and 90s, the cyberpunk poster child was without a doubt Rutger Hauer. There were other people who were vying for that title, but it was really Rutger. Both in terms of cyberpunk and post-apocalypse, Rutger has just the lock on it. And then in the 2000s, it very much, late 90s into the 2000s, it very much became Keanu Reeves with, Johnny Mnemonic, Matrix, John Wick, Cyberpunk now, and like I said, some of these lesser known roles. Yeah. John Wick is the current face of Keanu Reeves is the current face of cyberpunk. He is the patron saint, as it were.
Yeah, I almost forgot about this movie, THX 1138.
Ooh, that was George Lucas's very first film.
Yeah.
It sprang from his film school.
Yep.
Thing.
I mean,
it's a fun movie to watch.
And it's cyberpunk in the sense that it's a dystopian future. It's like one of those movies,
I mean,
that's borderline, sci-fi, far future.
I mean, it's far future, but it's still like grounded in like day after tomorrow. Like there's not really any space travel going on. They're not using. They're driving cars and whatnot.
Right.
THX is. It's firmly cyberpunk in my eyes. It was just released in the days before cyberpunk was a term that had been coined yet. In the same sense that Blade Runner was cyberpunk.
Well, I was thinking of like that movie's more similar to Logan's Run, Whereas Logan's Run
Logan's
is
Run is
far
cyberpunk
future.
in my eyes. It's very much on the border, and it's more cyberpunk in terms of theme than actual setting. The setting's pretty goofy, and I can't watch Logan's Run just because the dude's hair distracts me. Like, what the fuck is wrong with that dude's head? But when I was a kid, I loved that shit.
Yeah.
The original Metropolis, 37, 27? I don't know. Fritz Lang,
Yep.
silent film. That's a cyberpunk movie. It's got every one of the trappings. Chick gets kidnapped, turned into an android or cyborg, whatever you want to call her. The whole movie is about, fighting back against the corrupt corporate system. I mean, shit, it had blimps flying around and a giant futuristic city. I mean, it's the prototype for cyberpunk.
I almost forgot to mention Sixth Day. Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Sixth Day with Arnold Schwarzenegger, yeah. That's Schwarzenegger made a bunch of cyberpunk movies that some were better than others, but most people look at the movies he did in the cyberpunk genre as fantastic. I mean, I do. I liked
Total Recall.
I liked Total Recall.
Running
I liked
Man.
Sixth Day. I liked Running Man. Although I would have liked a Running Man that was more faithful to the books. And I prefer. People aren't going to agree with me on this. It's a very unpopular opinion, but I prefer the Colin Farrell Total Recall to the Schwarzenegger one, and I even prefer the Total Recall TV show to the Schwarzenegger one.
Yeah. And another movie that I just came across that now that I read the title and remember watching it was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Was a bit cyberpunk.
Yeah, that's one of those performances that I don't care for the actor, but it's a damn good movie.
Yeah, I get that with all of Tom Cruise's movies.
With Tom Cruise, somehow I've always been able to disassociate his film characters from what a real life whack job he is. Mostly because I think, while I do think he's a nutbag in real life, I also think he's a pretty harmless nutbag. Sure, he shills for Scientology, but he doesn't do it overtly. He doesn't. Yeah, he's just like that kind of nutty uncle that you're just all like, well, don't give him a sharp object and he'll be okay. But I've enjoyed most of his movies. I hated Cocktail, and I hated Days of Thunder, and I'm not a fan of Risky Business. But pretty much all of his other movies I've enjoyed.
Taps. Taps.
Yeah.
I think that was probably one of his best performances in his career.
I mean, that was super young. That was super young Tom Cruise and super young Sean Penn. That movie, I saw that when I was a little kid, and it made me cry. I hated that movie when it was first out because there's a kid in the movie named Derek, and Derek gets everybody else killed. And my name is Derek, and I got shit relentlessly when I was in school over it. I don't know why so many kids in my school were watching Taps, but it was a thing.
Well, it was, young kids are at the time close to their age.
Well, I mean, I was 10 at the time.
Yeah, but you got to remember that, there was teenagers who definitely were going to go see it because you had all these young teenage actors who, all the teenagers wanted to see in a movie.
Sure. I was living in Mississippi at the time, and I remember it came out about the same time that V was on television. And man, did I love V. I don't know. Sorry, there's that association in my brain that exists nowhere else.
Yep.
But yeah.
Let's talk about one more thing, then we probably can wrap it up. Have you seen the Blade Runner Black Lotus at all?
I have not. I don't have. What's that on Paramount?
Yeah. I'm starting to get really.
I don't have a Paramount account. I wish
do
I did just to watch Blade Runner.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I'm tired. I'm starting to get tired of these streaming services. And
it used to be there was just Netflix, and now there's like 24 of them, and I can't keep up.
Well, what scares me is that like Paramount, and again, Media Corp, Mega Media Corp, and Disney, right, are basically, hey, you want to see our movies? You can only see them on our channel. Or in the movies.
It's getting to the point where paying for all these streaming services is as expensive as cable.
Or more.
Yeah. I mean, Netflix just raised their prices.
Yep.
So did Disney.
So it's just getting a little annoying with this whole thing. Supposedly you can watch it on Adult Swim.
Yeah, I don't have regular TV. I stopped paying for cable because I had streaming services. So, yeah. All I pay for is internet and enough streaming services that it feels like I'm paying for cable. I trade with friends. Trade my accounts with friends, but even still, like, nobody wants to throw down money for Paramount, apparently. The one and only thing I'm interested in is Blade Runner, so I don't even care. Eventually, it'll show up on something else.
Well, Paramount's trying to push their Star Trek, so I know you're not
hard. Oh my God, are they trying to push Star Trek hard?
So.
And the only part of that I'm even remotely interested in is that Lower Decks cartoon. That looks pretty funny to me.
I've seen a couple snippets of it. Yeah, it looks hilarious.
Everything else I keep hearing conflicting messages about. I don't care enough about Star Trek as a franchise to really give it much thought. And like I said earlier, it's the fans that killed me for Star Trek. The fans are coming close to killing Star Wars for me, so I just stopped listening to the fans altogether. With Star Trek, I didn't have any choice. I grew up with too many Trekkies in my life, and they ruined it for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I will go watch whatever and ignore fans, ignore reviews, ignore all that, because a lot of it is just bias.
Like I don't watch reviews. I don't put any stock in them. Like I said, with Star Trek, it's just because everybody I knew growing up, if they were into science fiction at all, it was just about Star Trek, and they wouldn't shut up about it. I mean, I enjoyed watching Star Trek when I was a kid until, like, I got into high school, and they just wouldn't shut up.
About the Next Generation?
Yeah, about the Next Generation, or comparing Next Generation to the original series, and like trying to, like, I'd go, 14-year-old kid, stand with my friends for the evening or the weekend or whatever, and they're, wanting to watch a marathon of fucking Star Trek, the original series. Fucking.
That's how, like, me and my wife used to spend one of the nights together, was watching Star Trek.
I mean, it's great in moderation.
Oh. And it's always good to find a nerd wife. who
Yeah, no, you
enjoys
have
the
lucked out.
stuff. Yeah.
I've never
Really
spoken to her,
lucked
but
out.
she sounds like a fantastic woman. Fantastic lady.
Yes. It's funny because she wasn't mine originally. She was one of my friends.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you can find someone to spend your life with who not only supports you and your habits and hobbies, but enjoys them with you, that's gold. That is pure gold.
Yes, indeedy. Living proof that it can happen.
Indeed.
All right. We're about the 2-hour mark, so I think we can wrap it up. Yeah, so next time we're actually going to be discussing or reviewing. I think Wildside was slated for us, so we can get into
Oh, I can't wait for that one. That's one of my favorites.
the whole fixer genre and how you deal with the streets, and give some overviews from our point of view and stuff we think is gold within that book, which I would say the vast majority of it is. But we'll get into all those wonderful details. So this is Cybersmily. You can find me at cybersmily.net. That's my site. I am also lurking on most discords, cyberpunk discords that are out there, whether it's RTG, Cyberpunk Uncensored, or any of the looking for players. So if you do an @cybersmiley, more than likely you're going to hit me. I'm also on the 2 Reddit threads for Cyberpunk at 2020 and Cyberpunk Red, so you can also hit me on over there as well. Over to you, Wisdom.
I'm Wisdom 000. You can of the website Datafortress2020. You can find me on Facebook or hit me up on my email. Those are the 2 best ways to get a hold of me. I'm here on Discord, although I don't pay attention to it much. I have it turned off on my phone because quite honestly, the notifications get a bit much for me. I'm on Reddit, although I check that even less. But if you message me, I will always enjoy a conversation with you. You can get a hold of us for questions for future shows. I apologize again for being so discombobulated this episode and our lack of focus.
Man.
That's entirely my fault.
It is not your fault. It's the life around you's fault.
Well, I mean, sure, it's the universe conspiring against me's fault, but still. In the future, I very much hope that I can remain focused, and we should have, going forward, we should have much more clearly defined topics and formats for you.
Yep.
Thank you very much for listening to us.
And thank you to Rob Mulligan and Cyber Nation Uncensored for hosting us, as always. Go check out his site at cybernationuncensored.com. And also, I don't know if you can still get into his Kickstarter, but there is a Kickstarter that he did, which has figures, dice that you might find interesting. So,
if you got some money and you want to get some cool swag, I recommend it.
Yep. Night, everyone.